If you read books on science, mathematics, and philosophy 1 hour a day, probably within 7 years you will reach the highest level of success possible for a human being. This is written in the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, one of the books I read in this video. I thought there was no better quote to start this video. I've never been a great reader. In fact, I can really say that I hated reading, but simply cause I didn't read things that interest me. I don't like fiction books. To enjoy that kind of content, I much prefer to watch movies or TV series. But from the first non-fiction book I read, I realized that I loved books, and especially those who try to teach you something. It should not be perceived as an obligation or a job. No one forces you to read, but I am convinced that reading is one of the best ways to learn new things and broaden your vision. The absurd thing is that a book contains a person's ideas, advice, and decades of experience, and everything costs you only $10 and a few hours of reading. For that reason, I love to read, and for this, I want to try to read more and more. But I must admit that despite having greatly increased the number of books I can read in a year, I am still dissatisfied. I know I can do more. For this reason, I decided to make this video, where in 30 days, I try to read a book a week, sharing this challenge with you, and revealing you 3 tricks that helped me to complete this task. The books I'm going to read are The Hero's Journey, The Psychology of Money, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and the aforementioned The Almanack of Naval Ravikant. You will find all the links to buy them in the description. So, let's start. First day, first book. I want to read this book because a lot of YouTubers told that this book helped them to improve their writing skills. So I think that it can be useful for my YouTube journey. So let's start. First day, first book. The first book, The Hero's Journey. I will be honest, unless you are an aspiring YouTuber, writer or director, I don't recommend reading this book. It's well written, but outside of these cases, I do not see the motivation to face a reading like this. Okay, about the first trick to read a book. It said implementation intention, or try to make an appointment to read the book. We hardly skip an appointment that we have already scheduled. How many times have you missed a visit to a doctor or a job interview that you had scheduled? In fact, by doing so, you will know that you have to read when you have marked the reading session. And trust me, it will affect you in doing so. Let's now move on the second book, The Psychology of Money. Okay guys, day 10, I have to say that I love this book. I read 50 pages in these 2 days. I love the simplicity of the author. He tried to teach you the basic rules of money with stories or practical examples, and I really appreciate this book. I have little to say about this book, other than the fact that everyone should read it. It's really well written. It's an enjoyable book that makes you understand a lot about how people think about money. So you must read it. Okay, so the second trick is called chunking. Don't think of the book as a single task. The brain will perceive it as a difficult and long operation, and you will tend to postpone it. Try to divide it into small subtasks. Take for example a book of 200 pages. A person in average can read 200 pages in 5 hours. Divide it by 7 days, and in the end it turns out that it is only 45 minutes a day. Does that seem like a lot? Go and see on your phone how much time you spend on average on social networks, and let's talk about it. Better go back to the books, huh? Now is the time for the subtle art of not giving a fuck. Today maybe is the 17th day. I read 112 pages, and the entire book is like 250 pages. At the moment, I'm not sure that I will suggest you this book because I don't know. After more than 100 pages, I haven't learned something. Let's see. At the end of this book, I will be ready to tell if I suggest you this book or not. I'm a little bit torn about this book. I admit it's a good book and I read it with pleasure, but honestly, it didn't leave me much. I think this book is more for people who are a little more insecure. Not even for people completely insecure, because it's not telling them to do what they want, that they will do what they want.
My goodness, what an idea. Why didn't I think of that?
So, in my opinion, the goal of the book is very ambitious and not achieved. Not in most cases, at least. If you are a boy or a girl with a few insecurities, might be for you. On the contrary, read it only if you have no other ideas about what book to read. And about the last trick to read a book a week, in my opinion, also the most interesting, it's called temptation bundling. Take a task you really enjoy, like, I don't know, play video games or watching a TV series. What you can do is tell yourself that for each chapter or each 45 minutes reading session, you will be able to watch an episode of a TV series or have a game on Call of Duty. Do this a few times and trust me that you will begin to perceive reading as something more enjoyable, cause the brain will associate it with actions that you like. The fourth and last book is the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. I have read it only in 5 days, and I can say that it's simply a wonderful book. Unfortunately, I've not recorded a clip of reading this book cause I was on holiday. But trust me, I really enjoyed reading it, also in holiday. I don't know if I would recommend it to a kid, a boy, or to someone who is still studying. But for sure, I recommend it to those who have already developed skill and want to understand the vision of a person like Naval Ravikant, which I personally share in many aspects. It's full of interesting thoughts and points of view, and the most incredible thing is that all this book is free. In fact, from the Naval website, you can download the PDF or ebook version for free. So you have no excuse not to read it. At the beginning of this challenge, I had difficulties because I was not used to taking so much time to read, and sometimes I ended up thinking while I was working, man, after work I have to read. But the more the days went by, the more each time I couldn't wait to start reading. Obviously, this happens if you are reading books that you like and that are leaving you something. I never loved reading when I was a boy, because I didn't like the school imposition of having to read a book by force. And I didn't like the kind of books I had to read at school. So, until I was 18, I was convinced that I didn't like reading. And summing up, did I enjoy reading a book a week? Oh yes, very much. And I would like to keep this habit. If not a book a week, at least once every 2 weeks. With my full-time job, workouts and YouTube, I prefer to carry on these things. But reading is a wonderful tool that allows you to learn in a short time notions that the authors themselves took years to achieve. So, read more and apply the 3 tricks I told you in the video, and you will see that you will become a better person. I hope you liked the video. In this case, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell and go to the description to see all my socials. And why not? If you have any books to recommend, write them in the comments.